We're on the floor of the LA Auto Show, next on Talking Cars. Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of Talking Cars. I'm Mike Monticello.
I'm Gabe Shanhar.
And I'm John Linkove.
And today we're at the 2017 Los Angeles Auto Show, and we spent the last couple days walking around, getting in cars, writing stories, producing videos, doing a whole bunch of work for everybody out there so you can see what's going on here.
Yep.
We've now had some time to digest what we've seen, so let's get right into some of the vehicles that we think will really resonate with our viewers. And I'm thinking maybe the biggest one is the Subaru Ascent. John, what do you think about that?
Yeah, the Ascent kind of falls into the group of, we've seen other manufacturers make mistakes, and now we're introducing ours. And I know that Subaru introduced the Tribeca a number of years ago. That was barely a three-row SUV because the second row was cramped and the third row was infinitesimal. So this is really their first true three-row midsize SUV. And yeah, it looks a lot like the other ones because it's the basic box, but it looks like a pretty solid vehicle. Certainly the questions are, is a four-cylinder turbo going to really haul this big vehicle around?
Yeah, it's an all-new engine.
Exactly. It drives through a CVT, continuously variable transmission. But look, it looks like it's got the chops. It's got standard safety features, which certainly appeals to our rating system, so that'll help it score. It's big, it's roomy, it's easy to get in and out of. Third row access is pretty good. It's a little more kiddie than adult.
Did you hop in the back? You're kind of a tall guy.
I hopped in the back, and it's a slick system, not the slickest, not the Toyota Acura system, but it's pretty nice.
Can you fit back there?
I could fit. I wouldn't want to do 8 hours, but I could do a couple hours back there.
Gabe, did you hop in the back?
No, but to John's point, yeah, it's the third row access isn't as slick as in like the Volkswagen Atlas, right. But it's pretty decent. And yeah, I mean, I want to call the Ascent the Grand Forester because I think it really is a natural ascent from a Forester or an Outback.
Good. I like that.
Yeah.
Just like if you have a CRV, a Honda CRV, and it's a natural progression to go to a Honda Pilot, or from a Toyota RAV4, a natural thing to go to upgrade to Toyota Highlander. So finally, Subaru has something that offers that kind of natural
progression. I thought it looked like a giant Outback, actually. Just like a smaller. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say two things. That first of all, it's a natural progression for people to go to from the Forester to the Ascent, because before they're going from a Forester to a Highlander, to a Honda Pilot. Right. They were losing people because for years they didn't offer one, and people were asking, my family's getting bigger, what the heck can I do? Finally, they offer that. Interesting thing you talk about the Outback is a lot of people pointed out, technically, according to the cubic foot volume, the Outback is larger, has more space than the Ascent by like 1 cubic foot or so.
Yeah, the Outback benefits from the length, but the Ascent has the height.
It has the height, and I think it's going to have a better box that you can use it more. You're going to be able to bring that flat screen TV standing up, or you're going to be able to bring in a dryer or a dishwasher in the back of that, versus something with a little more of a curve.
Yeah, everybody does that. Rather than having it delivered, right?
Whatever. Maybe you spend all that money on an SUV, you can't afford to buy it and have it delivered. Yeah. But we're going to measure it with our box, with our pipe box, and we'll see what's really usable versus what is you could fill it with water.
Well, you touched on something that I think is very important, which is the eyesight system. I mean, you said standard safety system. What it really is that eyesight comes standard on every single Ascent, right?
Yeah, that's pretty important. So that means it has the automatic emergency braking and lane keep assist and all these advanced avoidance systems, which it eliminates all the buyer confusion. What am I getting? What option do I need?
Can you get it on the base trim, or can you not get it at all on the base trim?
Completely across the board, standard. That's wonderful.
And that's something that we at Consumer Reports really applaud when manufacturers do that.
Certainly, and it doesn't have this. Oh, is it just a price point one that they don't really want people to buy?
Right.
They may actually build a base model that's going to give you safety gear, and if you just want to have a low-cost three-row SUV, you can get it. They probably won't build a lot of them, but it's not some kind of mystical vehicle anymore that they don't intend anyone to get.
And the four-cylinder turbo, by the way, I mean, it's the Mazda CX-9 has that, and it works pretty well for the Mazda CX-9. So,
except for reliability.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So for the Subaru 2.4 liter turbo with the CVT.
Sorry about the pounding in the background.
Yeah. Some coffee.
There's a pretty good chance that the turbo kind of will likely mask the adverse effects of a CVT.
Hmm? Yeah, and now along the lines of what, the Ascent, I mean, they did have the Tribeca before, but really now they're getting serious with this 3.0 SUV. Speaking of vehicles that are, going into a segment that maybe, they weren't there before, Hyundai has their Kona Now, this is yet another subcompact SUV. We're seeing a lot of subcompact SUVs, but this is a big thing for Hyundai to jump into this market.
Yeah, and I think every mainstream auto, now that this subcategory, which used to be a subcategory, niche kind of a vehicle, I mean, when Nissan invented the category with the Juke a few years ago, there was nobody there.
Right.
Now it all of a sudden has become like a full-fledged category, and everybody's rushing to
maybe everyone thought
there.
It had to look goofy like the Juke, so they didn't want to build a vehicle like that. So that's why they didn't enter the category.
Goofy is in the eye of the beholder.
With the CHR, so they didn't get the message.
Exactly.
Actually, about the CHR, I mean, I can't get over the fact that you never see CHRs here in the U.S. I mean, where is that? I mean, to see more Toyota Mirais than CHRs, that's already saying something.
Yeah. Here in LA, a ton of Mirais, but of course it's free gas.
Right.
So,
but back to the Kona. I mean, there's some neat things about it. You know, a lot of the cars in that category, they only offer one engine, and usually it's not very powerful, maybe like 140 horsepower or something like that. One of the neat things about the Kona is it does offer an up-level engine. It's 175 horsepower, turbocharged 4-cylinder.
Right.
I mean, that's a pretty good thing, right?
It'll be interesting to see how it works with transmission and engine, in the
because
powertrain
it has the dual
harmony.
clutch transmission, right?
Yeah, and a lot of that, because the Tucson, had two engines and different transmissions, and one was great and one was not so wonderful. It'll be interesting to see if they thin it out eventually. They seem to be doing the two-pronged engine thing, like you mentioned.
Right.
Obviously, until we drive it, it'll be nice to see what it's like, but that gives me a little pause on the two-engine thing.
I feel like Gabe really wants to say something here.
Yeah, so the powertrain setup is reflecting of the Tucson, the 2-liter normal engine, 6-speed automatic, and
so
then non-turbo
engine.
Right, non-turbo engine, and the 1.6 turbo. So that's a kind of a good thing because it allows them to have a decent power and allows them to have an all-wheel drive version, whereas Nissan Kicks and the Toyota CHR don't offer you all-wheel drive because they think it's going to be too slow otherwise.
Right. Yeah.
Also, I mean, there are some neat features. I mean, the Kona has an optional power seat available, which is something that's very unusual in this class.
Right. Mm-hmm. One thing that was a little surprised about, though, is that the automatic emergency braking and forward collision warning don't come standard on the Kona. So that's a little bit of a letdown there.
And I think you just are going to see things like that with the entry levels until it percolates through from the top down. You're going to see that weird options. Maybe it's standard only on a top trim or something like that. That's come to cost, and at some point when they all of a sudden have a subcompact SUV at $25,000 because of options and stuff like that, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, right? It's hard to do.
It starts kicking people up.
When you have a starting price of $19,000, it's hard to do. When you have a Subaru Ascent that starts at like low 30s, it's much easier to do for the manufacturer.
It's funny that you bring that up because Nissan, sort of along those lines of subcompact SUVs, and also vehicles maybe that are addressing past mistakes. There's the Nissan Kicks. I mean, strange name, but this is the replacement for the Juke, and they're saying it will start. You can get one well equipped for around $19,000 or under $19,000, and it does come standard with automatic emergency braking and forward collision warning.
It does, yeah. I mean, because of us, Nissan is slowly starting to make the.
Did you just pat yourself on the back there?
Standard. So.
No, it's true. It is true. They've said that.
It is what it is.
I mean, with our point scheme, scheme not as in scheme as a game, but the way we set our points for testing. That's the way you differentiate yourself. You're going to get a bonus because you have this feature standard across the line, and Nissan understands that, and they're taking advantage of it. And other manufacturers aren't.
And Nissan probably understands that turbo is not that important, funky styling is not that important in this category. So room, price point. Because the 1.6 liter engine, I mean, on paper, seems a little weak.
Yeah,
that's why it doesn't offer all-wheel drive.
Not even 130 horsepower. So.
Yeah. But a car like that, at this price point, I mean, who's going to want to buy a Sentra or a Versa when you have a Nissan Kick?
Well, that's the thing. Talking with them, they're saying, look, the buyer before 5, 6, 7 years ago was going to buy a Sentra. Maybe they're going to step up from a Versa or a Versa Note, and thank them because those are cars you don't want to go out and buy. So now instead of a Sentra, you're going to buy the Kicks. Front-wheel drive is fine for you. You don't need to have all-wheel drive and all ruggedness. You just want fuel economy. You want some space. So it's a Sentra with a bigger cargo area.
Yeah.
And that's
more
that's
like a
what,
Versa than a Ascent. Right?
But that's what the buyer wants. They want that. They want that car, but now it's a big box.
Right.
I did notice that it had, it has rear drum brakes, which is pretty surprising in this day and age, Gabe. But where do you stand with that?
Yeah, that is pretty surprising. I mean,
That's an obvious cost-cutting measure, right?
Oh, completely, yeah. Not that it's not a given that it's going to have any deficiency in braking performance.
We'll find out when we buy one.
But yeah, we will, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, it just looks weird. You look at it.
Yeah,
it's
I
just
mean, come on. Like every mountain bike made today has disc brakes front and rear, and they weigh like 35 pounds.
Yeah.
So it's a little strange. But anyway, along these lines of kind of fixing past mistakes, Infiniti QX50.
Yeah,
I mean, there's a new one at the show, and
the old QX harken back to the Infiniti EX. Of the turn of the millennium almost. It's
like a 15-year-old car.
It was 15-year-old, right? And it was
lacked interior room,
lacked
cargo
interior
space.
room, and you knew that it was an old car, and the infotainment system was old, and it just was cramped. And they eventually did some games with it, to give it a little more rear seat room, but. This car's not significantly bigger, but it's a little wider, a little taller, and that's where you feel a lot of it. It looks nice. Infiniti still plays in the second tier of luxury. They're chasing the Audis, they're chasing the BMWs, they're chasing the Lexus NX in that category too, which isn't, in my opinion, a great car. It tests well, scores well, but I don't enjoy driving it. But it looks really nice, and the rear cargo area and the rear seat, good combination. You could drop the seat, and you have a pretty decent space back there. I was surprised how far you could pull the seats forward, and then there's a giant gap between between the cargo deck. But it's finally a modern vehicle because they had nothing in the market.
Yeah, I sat in the back. I thought, I'm vertically challenged, obviously, but I fit just fine.
So I could push back in the front seat,
hopefully
you could sit in the back.
Exactly. Hopefully we'll be better than the last one anyway.
Yeah.
And unlike the last one, the EX, which had it was really a close relative of the G sports sedan, rear-wheel drive sports sedan. This car is a front-wheel drive based vehicle with a continuously variable automatic. So it's on paper, it's a less sophisticated car than its predecessor, but it may give buyers the looks, the functionality that they need, and probably a lesser price point.
So it might not drive quite be as invigorating of a driving car, but it might be more efficient and useful than before.
Well, look at that category. Even when you see some of the BMWs are softer, the Audis are a little softer. They're giving up the driving excitement for the comfort and luxury. That's what buyers want. They didn't want the razor sharp handling of a G30, G35, G37 base vehicle.
Now, another vehicle that's what you were going to say.
It's arguable. Now that you have SUVs that are great handling from Jaguar and from Alfa Romeo, and the Audi and BMW are still good to drive. To have something that's watered down and not exactly like what the Infiniti brand kind of prides itself on I think it's a little questionable.
Yeah. Now, another vehicle that was here that is sort of filling a gap that it had in its lineup, the Lexus RX 350L, because now they've got a 3-row SUV that is car-based. Before you'd have to go to a truck-based Lexus if you wanted
the GX.
Yeah. So what do you think of what you've seen with this bigger RX 350L? Because it's not just they threw a third row in there; it's a bigger vehicle.
Yeah, I think it's really funny that when at the beginning of the last decade, we asked Lexus, how come you're not doing a 3-row RX? And they said, well, we looked at the Mercedes M-Class, and only like 5% of the take are 3-row SUVs, so we decided not to.
Right.
So it's funny how things kind of change around. But yeah, like you said, you had to go with a 3-row SUV Lexus. You had to go to a Lexus GX, which is the fancy version of the Toyota 4Runner, body-on-frame, off-road ready kind of SUV, which is out of style nowadays, of course. Now RXL, that gives it a legitimate competitor against an Acura MDX, BMW X5, Audi Q7, and what have you.
And you're a height guy, so how was the third row in this thing?
Third row's tiny. It's kids only.
Yeah.
It's a small third row. It's kind of cool how it articulates. It moves forward and back and up, and so that it kind of scoots in, without. So they're able to get it without compromising the second row. It moves quite interestingly. It's funny that you talk about the 5% because talking to Lexus now, they say, yeah, we expect about 30% of people of RXL sales, or RX sales to be of the
Really?
The 3-row version.
Funny that now that they've introduced the vehicle, they've jacked up.
Yeah,
that.
exactly. And just like the Ascent, here's a vehicle that, they're forcing people to lead the brand. So obviously I was cutting the bottom line. It's a standard RX. The rest of it very nice. Not the most engaging driving car.
Right.
Can't say about that because we haven't driven it, obviously. But the other RX wasn't. It's
a
about
good
luxury.
guess.
It's about quietness. It's about comfort. It's still a small third row, but you can get in on both sides. Relatively easy. Not again the slickest system, not the Acura system, for example, but pretty good.
But also, I mean, that probably styling was probably part of the consideration to kind of like hold off, not make it look like someone added like an illegal addition there. So it's kind of like it's smoothed out, and the C pillar and the D pillar are kind of like they blend in. So the styling is not offensive.
They made the roof line a little, the rear glass a little more vertical.
Yeah,
it's a little subtle differences.
Now, another new vehicle that I think we have to talk about is the Jeep Wrangler. They have all new 2018 Jeep Wrangler here. Now, this is an interesting vehicle because we've panned it in terms of our road test scores. It's the lowest rated SUV. And so it's kind of like, but our viewers love it, and it has very high owner satisfaction scores. I mean, this is kind of a weird thing. It's like,
well, we get it. I mean, Jeeps are fun with the top off, the doors off, and they're great off road. We get it. We're equipped with the right tires, of course. But the way some people react is like, they all live in Moab. They all go uphill every day.
Right.
Both directions, and they're like, I just don't understand. I could not love a Jeep. Look, Jeeps are great off road. They're great in good in snow, and they're great in the beach down in Daytona or whatever. It's not a fun car to drive to and from your commute.
As your everyday car.
And that's just the fact. And the fact is the reliability isn't great. And the fact is the mileage is not competitive.
Right.
Which is why they
the
changed
handling's kind of clumsy.
But we're not asking them to.
It's noisy inside.
And no one's asking them to say get rid of the Jeep and just make it a Cherokee or a Renegade.
Right.
So we get it. It's a fun car, and it's good to see that it's modernized.
And it's modernized, but if you look at it, it still looks very much like a Jeep Wrangler, which is probably a really good thing. Like you don't want to mess with that kind of success. Now, but there's a lot going on underneath that you can't see. Now, I know, Gabe, as an engineer, you can't comment on anything until you've gone through all the testing and everything, whereas we journalists can spout, opinions about anything anytime we want. But
I can do that too.
What are you seeing so far from the Jeep, this Wrangler that you think is heading in a new direction where it's maybe going to be more civilized in that kind of thing?
Yeah, so sure. I mean, it's a classic, no doubt about that, and it's an image vehicle, and it kind of projects, who you are and who you want to be with driving this vehicle. So all of that is beyond reproach, but modernizing it, and Chrysler was I think careful here and not to go too crazy here. I mean, still a body on frame and a live axle in the rear and what have you. But the infotainment is modern. It's got the Uconnect. It has more creature comfort. It's more aerodynamic. So it's going to be a little quieter. The wind noise may not be as horrendous as in the outgoing version. 8-speed automatic might give it more better drivability.
Replacing a 5-speed. I mean, that's a big step up.
Also, the 4-cylinder has a 48-volt kind of system, which is known in the business as a mild hybrid.
Right.
And the benefit is it gives you more seamless start-stop, and we haven't seen a modern interpretation of this yet.
And it's not just a 4-cylinder; it's a turbo 4-cylinder, mild hybrid. Which this is really a big step for Jeep, wouldn't you say? I mean, a turbo 4-cylinder on a Wrangler.
It's part of where they need to go.
Where you have to go.
Economy-wise, you have to. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be the off-road version or anything like that. I'm not gonna guess how it's going to perform. I'm not going to tell you whether it's going to have pulling power or be able to climb the hills with that. But for driving around, it's probably going to be a little more pleasant.
There's still going to be a V6, by the way, and at a later date, a diesel, which is not new for Wrangler in the world, but for the U.S.
Right. Well, and there's going to be a plug-in hybrid too by 2020. I mean, this is
that I'm not sure.
This is a whole new world. This is a whole new world.
I think that's the most outlandish part of the whole Wrangler.
Yeah.
a plug-in hybrid, I don't know if anyone's asking for that.
Right.
And the last time we heard about that was back in like the dark days of Chrysler when they had a fake one sitting at the Detroit Auto Show.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah. Well, I think that's going to do it for this episode. If you want to learn more about the cars we've talked about today, check out the show notes below. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.